Okay, so you'll remember this little exercise that we did here with the coins. So let's just have a quick refresh over that then. I've taken the elliptical marquee tool, and if you remember, the best place to place this to get that nice circle wasn't around the edge, because of that whole idea of the coin, of the circle you're making, kind of moving it out of position. Instead, we're going to aim roughly for the middle of this guy's ear. And two keyboard shortcuts I need. First one, Shift, will constrain the circle, or the oval I'm making, into a circle, and Alt will make it grow from the middle, hence the reason why I'm putting it here near his ear. And I'll just click and drag to make a perfect circle, and I'll aim to get it close to the edge of our coin. It's not quite perfect there. Now there's lots of options about how you can move this. You can, for example, pick up a selection and move it slightly if you go near the edge. But what you might find easier to get started is if you go up to the Select menu, and in the Select menu at the top, choose Transform Selection. Puts a bounding box round about your selection, and you can simply pick that up and move it. You can also use the handles on the sides just to enlarge the circle in any particular direction it might be required to grow or possibly shrink, depending on how you did with the first selection. And don't forget as well that if you want to make really small movements, you can use the cursor keys at this stage to move one pixel at a time. I'm using the part that moving a bit too far just to highlight that. And that makes a nice selection round about that circle. Could rotate it as well if I move my cursor just outside, but it's a circle, so you wouldn't get any benefit there at all. And then remember, whenever you're using this transform selection or any kind of transform tool, you have to accept that transformation before you can move on to anything else. So I'm going to stick with a more basic way just now, and in the control panel at the top, click on the little tick to accept changes to the transformation, and there I've got my coin selected. Now, so as I don't try to start making another selection, I'll go back to my selection tool, my move tool. Very important, you keep going back to there. It's almost like kind of like working in neutral, because it doesn't really try and create anything new on the page. And at this stage, I'll just click that mouse possé, I'll get that installed another time. At this stage, because I've spent a little bit of time, or you have spent a bit more time on the selection, really get into the habit of going up to the Select menu and saving your selection. So I'll click Save Selection, and I'm going to call this one Big Coin, so that if for any reason my selection disappears, I can still go back up to Select, Load Selection, and in this channel section here, there's Big Coin. Click OK, and my selection comes back. Okay, so that was making that selection. Now, if you remember, the next thing we wanted to do was to make multiple copies of the coin and scatter them all over the picture, and then rotate them, and we put in a drop shadow as well. So, in the layers panel, if you remember, there was a few different techniques we looked at. We could click on a new layer and we could copy and paste the coin, that's probably about the only one that we looked at other than making a new layer from the selection, which was in the layer menu, and you go down to new, and you've got in the layer and so on and so forth, you've got this layer via copy, keyboard shortcut for which is Command J. So I'm going to use that Command and J, or Control J if you're using a PC. And what it does is in the layers panel, if you remember, it gives us a new layer called layer 1, funnily enough, with the indicator here, the thumbnail showing it's just a coin with a transparency around about it. The original coin is still in the background layer. And what that means now is that if I come over to that coin, I can pick it up, I can move it, and I can put him anywhere I like. Now I need to keep redoing the same step time and time again, which could mean loading the selection back up, going back to the background layer and pressing Command J again, and get another layer called layer 2 that would have the coin in the same place, sitting on top of the big coin. Instead, a much faster way, remember, is once you get a layer that contains the content you want to start duplicating it, is you could right click on the layer and you could duplicate the layer, and it says what you want to call it, and I'll say this one's called layer 2. Click OK, and I've got my layer 2. Or, slightly faster option in my opinion, is simply pick the layer up here, drag it down to the little buttons that you can see at the bottom of your layers panel, and use that little button there that you can see that gives you the new layer. So by dragging and dropping that over the new layer button, remember, that'll give you a new layer, and then you can create as many as you like. So I'm just going to keep going with that until I get about, I'll give myself 5 coins. I feel like being rich. Now, if you remember with the layers panel, the first thing that's really important with the layers panel is that if you want to move an object in a layer, select the layer the layer in the panel, and then you can pick up the coin and you can move it. So I select the layer that contains a coin, come over to my picture, pick up the coin, and place it where it's supposed to go. Remember the description I gave you that these coins were like sheets of acetate, or these layers are like sheets of acetate. And there's me picking up the layer with the acetate, and it's got a picture of a coin on it, and I can throw that wherever I want. And that gives me a range of layers there, all with the coin all facing different, not facing different directions, all positioned in different places. If I was taking my time and I was actually making a proper design of this, I would go in and rough the coins up a little bit, darken some, lighten some, change the oxidization you can see in the coins. And if I had any sense when I took the photograph, I'd have taken the coin from both sides. As it is here, this guy's been incredibly lucky playing heads and tails and has got a lot of heads. Now the other thing that we need to focus on is the fact that all these coins are looking in the same direction. So either something really exciting is happening over here on the right hand side, or it's quite clearly a duplicate coin that's just been repeated time and time and time again, which as you and I both know, that's exactly what it is. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take some of the coins and I'm going to make them face in different directions just to give the picture a slightly more random feel. So if I take, I'll start from layer 1 down here, the first coin I made, which will be this one here. And I'm going to go up to the edit menu and come down to where it says transform, halfway down. And in there you'll see that there's an option that says rotate. We can take hold of this bounding box that comes up, this transformation box. And again, if I move it over to the corners here, you see I get this bendy arrow, which indicates that I can now rotate. It's the only thing I can do with that particular tool selected, obviously, because it's the rotate tool. And I can rotate the coin until I'm happy, just grabbing it and dragging it until I'm happy. And this time, rather than click on the tick up here to accept that transformation, I'm going to re-shortcut, press return, and that accepts it. Now, if I move to another layer that has a different coin, maybe this one, or that one there it is, and I want to do that transformation again, only this time I'm going to do it a slightly faster way. Instead of going up to the menu and coming down and choosing rotate and rotating, with the layer selected, I'm going to press the keyboard shortcut Control and T together, or Command and T for transform together. And that brings up the same transformation box. This tool is slightly different because this is the free transform tool, remember? And so with the free transform tool, you can transform things like scale, and you can also transform the anchor point in the middle, and you can transform scale in one direction or another, or the corner, it will do both directions. So you have to be a bit more careful with where you're placing your mouse when you're using this particular tool, although it is faster. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move my cursor until it goes outside the bounding box, the square that you can see, transformation, until it turns to a bendy arrow again. And then I pick it up and I'll throw him that direction, press return, and then I'll just quickly repeat that for the other coins as well. Fling him that way, to that one, fling him that way. And you see how much faster this is. It's a bit similar. And the last one, I'll just make a small change in the last one. There we go. Okay, so there's the coins. Great. Now, apart from the original coins, all the other coins don't have a drop shadow. So remember what we did was we added a drop shadow into these other coins and then repeated it across all the others. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first layer, but he's slightly covered up, so he would actually be a bad option. So I'm going to take one of these layers that is a bit higher up, maybe this one here, so if I switch it off and on, that coin. The important thing is that I can really see clearly what it is I'm going to be doing before I apply it to everything else. So with the layer selected, I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel where you see it says FX, and click on this little FX button. It comes up with a list of what you want to apply. I click on Drop Shadow, and a dialog box pops open, which I should really move out of the way. that gives me the options for the drop shadow. You can see here, I can change the angle. Now remember, if you're changing the angle is indicating where the light is coming from, not which way the shadow is going. So I need to put the shadow, the light rather, about 10, 11 o'clock to get it to go in the same direction as the others. Distance allows me to increase or decrease the distance that the coin appears to be sitting from the base. Spread allows me to just intensify that a little bit, and the size allows me to soften it, basically. And the combination of the size and spread will allow you to make the shadow bigger or smaller. Now, if I look at the other shadow, it's quite sharp, so I don't really want a big size change there. Just maybe something like 2 pixels, so it's soft, but it's not mushy. Spread, I'll just push that out a little bit. It's maybe a wee bit too far. Just trying to get it to match the other coin as best I can. And I think the angle's slightly off. And maybe I'll push the distance a fraction, but not much. Okay, so there we go. That gives me my shadow. Now, the only other problem with the shadow, remember, was the colour. The colour's black. This colour is not black because of the coin beneath, and also reflections of the coin. So I need to change black as the option for colour here. And I'm going to click on the little colour picker. And rather than try and match the colour inside here, I'm simply going to take my cursor to a sample of the colour in the other shadow, select it. It gives me a colour from inside there, which will take me a bit longer to find, and applies that colour to the coin, thus giving the shadow a slightly reflected light coming back. There we are. Now, that gives me the effect on that coin, but I need to then apply that same effect on all the other coins so that they all look the same, and I don't really want to have to go through the whole process, remember. So what I'm going to do is right click on the layer that has the effects applied, and I'm going to choose from the drop down menu that came in to copy the layer style. Now the layer style is this effects thing here with the drop shadow. But what I can do now is I can select either one, or if I press and hold Control or Command, depending on your operating system, I can select all the other layers that I want to apply the shadow to, right click on them, and simply choose Paste Layer Style. And it pastes the same layer style across them all, and that saved me an awful lot of work. Now the last thing I'm going to do with this, just to tidy up the edges of the picture, because I don't want this transparency around the outside that I would end up getting, what have you. So I'm going to take my crop tool here. It's worth making sure that there's nothing written inside things like the width and height. And if you don't want to change the resolution, you could take that out as well, but I'll keep the resolution the same. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and I'm going to draw a box to just crop, and it can be adjusted slightly. Again, it's just like the transformation tool. You can rotate it and you can stretch it and what have you. And I'll just get that sitting inside that picture, and then when I say I'm happy, I can click on the tick, or again I can use that keyboard shortcut to hit return, and there's my coins that's set. Okay, so that's your basic selection tool there, using that shape. Now the next lesson will remind you of a slightly more complex method.